All right, so first off, I give all praise to Yahweh, in the name of the Son, Yahweh Shai, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops of Great Millstone, otherwise known as GMS for short, but also known as the Prophets of Doom. Now, these are where I have learned this truth and where I am still learning this truth. And also, I want to say shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel, Lord willing, I am of that number. Okay, this video, we're going to go back into speaking about this warning that we find here in Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17. All right, and we're going to break it down a little bit, and then, Lord willing, we'll come back with another video and give some worldly examples of proof, all right, that this or evidence that these things that were written in the scriptures aforetime are once again coming to pass. All right, so let's go ahead and start at the verses. All right, Revelation 13, verse 16. It says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." Verse 17 reads, "And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." Okay, so let's start with letting you know that, hold on a second here. That in the, if you go to the, before we get to the breakdown of that, all right, let's start with something else really quick. Along on the same point though, all right, to get the understanding of what this verse is speaking about, you have to know that knowing the words or etymology of words is key, all right, to understanding scripture. All right. So if you go here to the prologue of Ecclesiasticus, all right, which is a book in the Apocrypha. Hold on a second, let me get here. So if we go to the prologue here, which is right at the beginning of chapter 1. All right. Hold on a second. Let me get this pulled up here. Okay. I'm not going to read the whole prologue. All right. But I'm going to go straight to the point. If you read the whole prologue, it's not going to change the point that we're about to bring out here. All right. But I'm going to go straight to the point. So down here within this prologue, it reads, all right, it says, "Wherefore let me entreat you to read it with favor and attention, and to pardon us, wherein we may seem to come short of some words, which we have labored to interpret. For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into an other tongue have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language." Okay, so if I, as a matter of fact, I've never done this before. Let me see if I highlight this. I wonder what Google will say. What is being said by this? So hold on a second. I've never done this before. So I'm gonna just type in what is meant by, and then I'm gonna insert that text that we just read there. Okay, and then let's see what Google says really quick. All right, it says this quote is an excerpt from the Greek prologue to the book of Ecclesiasticus, also known as the book of Sirach, found in the Apocrypha. It was written around 132 BCE by the author's grandson, who translated the original Hebrew text into Greek for Israelite communities living in Egypt. It says the passage is one of the earliest recorded pieces of the translation commentary in history, and it addresses the fundamental challenges of changing text from one language to another. So it starts to go into the meaning of the passage here. All right, it says the translator is asking the reader to be patient and open-minded. He is apologizing in advance because despite his hardest efforts, which is what it means by labored to interpret, all right, it says some parts of his translation might not perfectly capture the exact wording or brilliance of the original text. When it says for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them, it says languages do not have exact one-to-one matches for every word or concept. When you translate Hebrew ideas into a different language like Greek or English, they lose some of their original power, cultural nuance, and depth. When it says, and not only these things, but the law itself, and the prophets, and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language, it says this limitation is not unique to his grandfather's book, all right, speaking of Sirach. It says even the core sacred scriptures, the law, the prophets, and the rest of the books sound profoundly different and lose some of their original meaning when read in translation rather than in their native Hebrew tongue or Hebrew language. Okay, so that is very important. All right, keeping that in mind is very important to note. All right, when you go into these scriptures and you pray to get understanding. All right, you understand what it means by when the Lord tells you to read. You understand that that's important. You understand that it's important when the Lord tells you to study. All right, this goes along with that. All right, so it is a very key thing to understand that these translations, these transliterations, all right, all need to go back to, or you need to go back to the original languages to understand what is truly being said. All right, a lot of people over here in Babylon the Great, which is better known as America. All right, the USA. Okay, you get caught up in their mindset, thinking that just because you speak English and that you're reading these scriptures in English, that it's the end all be all. Okay, you have to get out of that prideful mind state. You have to realize that in order to gain understanding, you need to go back into these older languages. Okay, not only that, but like we mentioned, you have to pray. Okay, uh, but this is not a small thing. Okay, you can't look over this part of it. So I do want to read that same prologue, even in the Good News translation, which is also in English. But you know, you can read two things in English, and it could say the same thing, and you won't even realize it. All right, speaking or showing you that, all right, language and words, all right, play a pretty big part, all right, in what you are reading and what you are understanding, what you are trying to gain comprehension in. Okay, so again, let's go ahead and get this prologue again in the Good News translation. Okay, it reads, and it's going to tell you the same thing. Okay, it's going to tell you the exact same thing. It's just going to use different words. All right. So in the Good News translation of the prologue of Sirach, it says, "Let me urge you then to read this book carefully." Speaking of Sirach. It says, and with an open mind, and please be patient in those places where, in spite of all my diligent efforts, I may not have translated some phrases very well. What was originally written in Hebrew does not always have the exact same sense when it is translated into another tongue. That is true not only of this book, but even of the law itself, the prophets, and the other books. It says the translations differ quite a bit from the original, which points back at the what we read there in the King James Version. All right, when it says, basically what it says at the end of that is the things written, okay, have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language, meaning that these things harmonize. They go together, all right? They go in line with each other, all right? They speak very clearly when they are spoken in their own language or understood in their own language. But the good news tells you that same thing, just in a different way. It says the translations differ quite a bit from the original, right? So these things that we read it, or these languages that we read it in outside of the Hebrew, outside of the Greek, right, they differ quite a bit than when you get the understanding in the Hebrew and the Greek. I mean, there are some things that are kind of similar, but we are here to receive and, all right, speak the 100% truth, right? So it's important that we go and receive under 100% truth, all right? So keeping that in mind, all right, let's go back here and read Revelation 13 again. Revelation 13 and 16. It says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So now that you know that etymology is key, all right, it is key to understand the Greek. When you're in the New Testament, it is key to understand the Hebrew in the Old Testament. Then you can start to go back through these scriptures and apply that knowledge, right? So the words that we're going to look at here to start off with is this word mark. Okay, the Greek word for mark is charagma in this context, right? In the context of these scriptures right here, these two scriptures, the word mark goes back to meaning charagma. And what that word means is a stamp or an imprinted mark. Okay, something that is engraven or injected. Okay, in this case, it's going to be injected in you, right? It is the micro C-hip, and this technology already exists in the earth. It's just that it hasn't been made mandatory, all right? Which comes into play when you read that, and he causeth, all right, causeth all. All right, it's going to be made mandatory. Okay, and how they're going to introduce this mark or charagma or micro C-hip, okay, into your body is, if you go, is through a big needle, all right, which if you go to the root word of charagma, it is karax, which means a palisade, a stake, or a sharp pointed instrument used to pierce or inject. And indeed, that's what they use to inject this technology into human bodies. If you go back and look at the examples that we give, or the example that I give on this channel for the mark that they put into your hand, okay, you can go look at Walletmore, Walletmor. That is one word. Okay, you can take note of the name, you can take note of the people surrounding this thing, but you have to realize who we are dealing with. We are dealing with the Esau Edom, who changes names, locations, just things that surround this technology, which is the technology that you want to go look at. Go look at how it's introduced into the human body. All right, go look at what that technology is and how it's introduced into the human body, and you'll see that it is the charagma, all right, an imprinted mark or something injected, right? And how did they introduce it into the body? Again, that root word for charagma is karax, which goes back to meaning a palisade, a stake, or something, some kind of pointed instrument, right, to pierce or inject something into the body, all right? And you'll see exactly that, all right? See how it is key knowing what mark means in the Greek in order to see clearly what this mark of the beast is. There should be no question, all right? It's not tax, all right? It's not a tax. It's not a sin, all right? Sin itself is not sin in itself, all right? You can hold that chip in your hand between two fingers, right? Does that mean that you have received the mark? No. You get this thing put into your body. That is where the sin lies, right? Is with when you introduce that thing into your body, when you combine with that thing, that is receiving that MOTB, all right, or a mark of the beast. Okay, so you shouldn't have to question now what this is, right? If the Lord is working with you to understand it, all right. So now the one that it speaks of, right, with the forehead and the hand. Again, when you look at that word forehead in the Greek, okay, it is, I mean, not hand, but when you look at the word forehead in the hand or forehead in that context, it goes back to the word metapon. Metapon means the space between the eyes. All right, what is between the eyes? Okay, it is your brain. All right, your mind, which is what they're trying to get into. Okay, trying to get in there. All right. Now, an example that we use, the example that I use here on this channel, is Neuralink, or Elon Musk's brain technology. All right, go look at that. Okay, go look at the technology. Again, you can mark, I mean, not, yeah, you can mark or take note of uh, the names, the company surrounding this technology, but it is key that you go look at the technology itself so you understand what this is. All right, because they can change a company and have the same technology. Now, if it's not going to be Neuralink, and if Elon Musk has nothing to do with it, does that mean that it's not the mark of the beast? Hell no, it doesn't mean that. All right, but if it's that technology and if it's being merged with your body, that's where the problem is. Again, okay. So again, when you go into these words, it proves, okay, that it's not sin. All right, the mark of the beast is not sin. Now, the act of getting it is sin. All right, but you're cutting and putting something into your flesh. All right, and the scriptures are warning about this thing. All right, but it is not sin itself. All right, it's not Sunday worship. Okay, it is a physical microchip that's going to be injected into the human body. All right, so again, let's go back and look at these couple of scriptures with those things in mind that you have just learned, Lord willing that you just learned it. All right. Verse 16 read, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." This he is referring to Esau Edom, all right, the self-called and so-called white man. All right, now does that mean that everyone that looks white is a Edomite? No. If you still think that we're saying that, hey, you're not really listening. Okay. The self-called and so-called Caucasian race, all right, is where the bulk of the Edomites are. Okay. Just like on the flip side, all right, just because you have melanation or you're melanated does not mean that you're an Israelite. All right. Does not mean that you are an Israelite. We were scattered into all nations of the earth, man. So we look like all nations of the earth. Okay. So it's not a colorism thing. All right. We have to speak these things in ways that you understand it. So yes, the self-called and so-called white man is where the bulk of the Edomites are. All right, just as we say the bulk of the Israelites are in the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American races. All right. Does that mean everyone who looks a certain way is a certain nation? Okay. So again, Esau, Edom, all right, the he in this verse here, verse 16, all right, is their main place of stay is their capital, all right, is Babylon the Great, which is America, the United States of America. All right, but they also have a team. All right, Edom is not only in the U.S., but they are in NATO, in the EU. All right, these powers combined are the revived Roman Empire. Okay, and what they are trying to do here is gain absolute, excuse me, absolute global control. All right, they want to coerce everyone, all right, to receive this mark. That's why I said causeth all. All right, then it gives you either side of each spectrum, small and great, rich and poor, free and bond. Okay, and then how are they going to cause it all unless they have the power to do so? And they most definitely do. If you go to Job 9:24, it tells you that the earth is given to the hand of the wicked. All right, so this is their mission. All right. Verse 17 read again, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And what this is telling you is it's giving you the details of the total weaponization of the global economy and how it's ran. All right. So if you do not bow down to this man and receive this mark or this charagma, all right, your means of survival, all right, your basic means of survival, like buying food, paying rent, all right, going about your business on a daily, all right, having doing these things to receive clothing on your back, a roof over your head. Okay, it's going to be deactivated. All right, your your ways of living, all right, your means of life, your means of living is going to be deactivated if you don't bow the knee to them. On the flip side, if you do bow the knee to them, that means you're choosing them over Yahweh Baal Hashem, Yahweh Shai, or Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai, who is the Almighty and the Messiah. All right. And if you try to play the middle, there is no middle. There's no middle ground, not with Esau Edom, and most definitely not with Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. All right. So when this thing comes upon the earth, which it is already here in the earth, it just hasn't been made mandatory. There are many people with this thing in their body already. Many, many people. All right. So once this thing is made mandatory, all right, their decision's already been made. All right. Their decision has already been made. They took it even though it wasn't even mandatory yet. All right. For whatever reason, they went against the Lord. Okay. Now, the decision you make, all right, shows whose side you were on from the beginning anyway. All right. So, Lord willing, all right, this was clear, all right, straight to the point. And Lord willing, also, we'll come back with some more videos giving you examples, worldly examples of how these people are going to push this mark or causeth all to receive this thing. All right. So again, I hope this came through as sincere. I hope it came through and it was edifying. So with that, I'd like to say all praise to Yahweh in the name of his son, Yahweh Shai, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Also double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops of Great Millstone, otherwise known as GMS for short. And also I want to say shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I'm of that number, and Lord willing, we'll see you in the next video. Shalom.